Welcome back, my friends of mystery and fear. Ghost. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a chilling news story. Now, find a quiet place, turn off the lights, and get ready to dive with me into one of the most terrifying tales you've ever heard. Imagine standing guard in the dead of night when the forest around you suddenly goes silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. Then, out of nowhere, you hear a single, heavy knock echo through the trees. The kind of sound that doesn't just make you look up, it makes you realize you're not alone. They were stationed at a remote checkpoint, miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by endless stretches of forest. For the men assigned there, nights usually felt long but uneventful. Just the steady hum of radios, the occasional rustle of wildlife, and the monotony of waiting for morning. But this night was different. The forest wasn't alive with sound. It was empty, still, almost like the trees themselves were holding their breath. The knock echoed once, then again. Slow, heavy, deliberate. It didn't sound like gunfire or an animal moving through the brush. It sounded like something striking the trees on purpose. The men froze. Each thud seemed to vibrate through the checkpoint walls, carrying a weight that didn't belong in the middle of nowhere. One soldier lifted his night vision scope, scanning the tree line. Nothing, just shadows and branches swaying lightly, though no wind touched the camp. Another swore he heard faint whispers carried on the air, but when he asked if anyone else heard it, the radios suddenly cut out with sharp static. The sergeant ordered everyone to stay sharp, but his voice betrayed something rare: fear. They were trained for ambushes, for firefights, for the chaos of combat. But this wasn't in the manual. And just as the tension started to feel unbearable, something enormous crashed through the brush. Branches snapped, and a dark shape lurched between the trees. The soldiers swung their rifles up, fingers hovering over triggers, but the thing moved too fast. One moment it was there, the next it vanished into the shadows. No footsteps, no breathing, just silence again. One of the younger men whispered that it looked like a person, but taller, stretched somehow, its movements unnatural. Another swore he saw nothing at all, just tricks of the night. Arguments broke out in hushed tones, each man trying to convince himself that what he saw, or didn't see, was the truth. The forest, though, didn't wait for them to decide. From deep within the trees came a sound that didn't belong to any animal they knew, a low, guttural moan that twisted into a shriek so sharp it rattled inside their chests. The ground itself felt like it trembled under the noise. And then the knocking started again. Louder this time. Closer. The pounding on the trees stopped. For a heartbeat, everything was still. The men barely breathed, their nerves stretched to breaking. Then, without warning, the wooden gate at the checkpoint shuddered violently, as if something massive had slammed against it from the outside. Splitters rained down. The soldiers rushed into formation, rifles aimed at the entrance, but what came next made their blood run cold. A long, pale hand, too thin, too bony, slipped through a crack in the gate, dragging its nails across the wood with a screech that set every tooth on edge. One soldier opened fire, the muzzle flash lighting up the night, but when the smoke cleared, there was nothing. Just the gate, scarred and trembling. Then came the smell, sharp, metallic, like rusted iron mixed with rot. It seeped into the air, thick enough to taste. And with it, a sound rose just beyond the walls. Dozens of voices whispering in unison, speaking words the men didn't understand. The sergeant barked orders, but before he could finish, the gate split wide open with a deafening crack. The gate groaned as it swung open, revealing nothing but darkness. The soldiers held their ground, barrels trained on the tree-lean, hearts hammering loud enough to drown out thought. Then a figure stepped into view. At first glance, it looked human, tall, draped in what seemed like tattered fabric that clung to its frame. But the longer they stared, the less human it became. Its limbs bent the wrong way, its head tilted too far, and its shadow stretched unnaturally long across the dirt. The whispers grew louder, crawling inside their skulls. until one soldier dropped his weapon and clamped his hands over his ears, screaming. The others tried to hold the line, but the figure only tilted its head and took another step forward. And then, as if mocking them, it vanished, gone in a blink. Only the echo of its footsteps remained, circling them in the dark. The sergeant shouted for flares. The night exploded in sudden red light, and what the soldiers saw waiting in the trees made them wish they had never looked. The flare hissed as it climbed, bursting above the trees in a harsh red glow. The soldiers shielded their eyes for a moment, but when they looked back, their breath caught in their throats. The forest wasn't empty. Shapes stood between the trees, dozens of them, their bodies unnaturally still. Each figure looked like a person, yet their faces were wrong. Stretched skin where eyes should be, mouths twisted open in silent screams. Their heads all turned at once, locking onto the checkpoint like predators scenting prey. One of the creatures lurched forward, its joints cracking as it moved. Another followed, then another, until the whole line of faceless things began to step into the clearing. Their silence was worse than any roar. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. The soldiers opened fire, the gunshots deafening, sparks flying into the night. But the figures didn't fall. Bullets tore through them as though they were made of smoke. Yet every step brought them closer. The sergeant shouted to fall back, but even as they retreated, the whispering voices grew louder, echoing from every direction, seeping into their minds with a single chilling promise. You don't leave the forest. The air erupted with gunfire, the crack of rifles shattering the night. But the faceless things kept advancing, step after step, unstoppable. Panic spread through the squad like wildfire. One soldier dropped his weapon entirely and bolted toward the trucks, screaming that they were already dead. Another froze in place, firing blindly into the dark until his rifle clicked empty. The sergeant barked orders, his voice raw, but the chain of command had shattered. Red light from the flares flickered out, plunging the scene into darkness again. And in that instant, the whispers turned into something worse, laughter, low, distorted, crawling under their skin. A shadow swept through the checkpoint faster than any man could move. One soldier was yanked into the trees, his scream cut short like a radio going dead. Another was dragged to the ground, claw marks gouging into the dirt where he had stood. The survivors stumbled backward, retreating through the checkpoint, their boots pounding on the pavement. But no matter how far they ran, the forest seemed to follow. The trees shifted, closing in like the forest itself was alive, determined to trap them. By the time they reached the road, only a handful remained, their eyes wide, their weapons useless, their sanity hanging by a thread. And ahead, in the glow of their headlights, stood a single figure waiting. The figure in the headlights didn't move, yet the air around it pulsed with menace. Every instinct screamed danger, but it felt almost intelligent. One of the soldiers whispered, voice shaking, what is that?" The creature, or man, tilted its head, and the whispers returned, louder now, echoing in their minds. The surviving soldiers raised their weapons, but the figure only smiled, a slow, unnatural curl of lips that promised nothing but death. Before anyone could fire, the ground beneath their feet trembled. Trees groaned, flares extinguished mid-air, and shadows lunged from every direction. Screams erupted, blending into a single, horrific chorus. Then silence. When the backup finally arrived hours later, the checkpoint was empty. Weapons lay scattered. Footprints led nowhere. And the forest, it was still, as if it had never been disturbed. Except for one thing, a faint whisper on the wind, carrying a single, chilling word. Run! With the last scream fading into the forest, everyone felt an icy chill run through their veins. No one was found, and there were no clear traces left behind. Yet the wind carried faint whispers, as if the forest itself was laughing at them. And in the final moment, a strange shadow disappeared among the trees, leaving behind a single message on the ground. You will never be safe again